All right, perfect. Welcome. So, welcome to our Small Business Owner series. This is an exciting series we're putting together this year, where we're just talking about lots of different issues and topics that affect small business owners, lots of common questions that you ask, things that you need to know. And today we are talking about all things human resource related, and we have Michelle LeBlanc here with us, who is an expert in all things human resource related. So that's perfect. Michelle, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody and tell us a little bit about your background?
Of course. Well, thanks, Christine, for inviting me to have this conversation. My name is Michelle LeBlanc. I am a human resources advisor. At the end of the day, I work primarily with small to mid-size growing businesses. I have a really extensive background that's maybe interesting to some, maybe not, but I've been in the people space for my entire career. A lot of that was actually spent in really high compliance, highly regulated areas. I worked in the oil and gas industry for many, many years, worked supporting manufacturing, and then got into startups and the small business arena. So that's really where kind of my niche is, where my passion is. My husband and I, in a personal sense, are also entrepreneurs and run our own business at home. And so that also gives me a little bit of a leverage and kind of different insight than maybe your traditional HR advisors. So I love working with small businesses, small business leaders, and this is a really exciting topic because there's always needs from a people perspective that a lot of us just don't realize. And so excited to have this conversation today.
Yeah, me too. Your background is so perfect because I felt that way too, that after I started my own business, it was just a totally different context to the pain and the frustration that you feel sometimes as a small business owner, that feeling of overwhelm and wearing multiple hats and like not knowing what you don't know that you should know or always where to find the answers. So I love that you guys also run your own business and that you have that context as well. So we have some questions, but I just was thinking of this while you were talking, and I'm going to put you on the spot. What is like, you might not even be able to tell us. Maybe you can make up fake names, aliases. What's like the craziest scenario that you've ever seen in your human resource? Because I know
Oh,
that there's some interesting ones out there.
oh man. Um, you know, you get a lot. So working for really large global businesses with a lot of different trades and pieces of operation, you definitely get your fair share of stories. Um, one in particular, oddly from an office setting, I always go back to it. And it ended up being a situation where a woman had been an employee. She was kind of a senior admin role for a very visible leader in the organization, and she was kind of at the point where we were kind of thinking, okay, you're at retirement, you've been over 10 years, all of that kind of good stuff. The short of it is that as people thought she was preparing for retirement, you kind of get in that checked out mode, right? Like if
Sure.
you're leaving a role or you're retiring. And so they were seeing some performance issues. And again, we're talking retirement age. Come to find out after some investigation on her supervisor's part, she was actually a very high functioning alcoholic that kept a bottle of whiskey in her desk drawer.
No.
And
Oh
so
no.
at
Oh
and
no.
then, yeah, and so she was reported. We had the performance conversation. About a week later, there was reports that someone thought that she was intoxicated
Oh
at
no.
work, and turns out she was a lot. And so we had to go through this whole, you go through the whole investigation, and come to find out, there was like a storage closet where she kept
Stop it right now.
empty bottles because like where else would she dispose of them during the workday? So that was fun, and it was interesting, but it was also very kind of sad because
Yeah.
you're dealing with like someone's retirement, someone's future as far as them getting those benefits and things like that. So I would say that one is just one that comes to mind because it was such a just left field, you would have never thought, you
Oh
know.
man.
So, moral of the story, probably not partying with your handles of whiskey in your coffee cup. I wouldn't recommend.
Not recommended. Got it. I mean, it does sort of like while you're talking though too, I mean, it is sad. And I also just think from the small business ownership perspective, like we don't tend to employ thousands of people in our small
No,
businesses. It
you
tends to
don't.
be a very small, tight-knit group. And there's a lot of emotions that go into scenarios, around HR, especially that one or even something similar. Like there's this sort of sense of like betrayal and disappointment when you
Mm.
find out, especially somebody that's been with you for a really long time. Do you find that the business owners, like that comes up a lot in conversations when they're having a difficult time with employees?
100%. You hit the nail on the head. When you are an entrepreneur, when you own your own business, whether you built it from the ground, you bought it, you acquired it, you were left it, even if you don't have that actual ownership piece, I notice that folks that are kind of those early employees, right? Those early hires
Yes.
that have been with the team a long time, there is a sense of this is my baby,
Yeah.
this is my business. And so when something happens, people a lot of times take it very personally. We've done it in our own business. I'm sure
Yeah.
you guys,
We
you
have
can think
to.
back.
We have
Yeah.
to. It's
you
hard.
you and it's harder, I think, talking from just the people and kind of the behavioral emotional side, you know in a 5,000 person company or in a 5 person company,
Mm,
and you and I have had conversations about this, there has to be a level of trust that the team has with each other. That doesn't mean you have to be best friends and you're going to baby showers and things like that. But
sure.
when you are at work, whatever the situation is, whether you're operating equipment, whether you're in someone's financials, whether you're providing a service to whoever, there has to be a trust from leadership, ownership with that person. And so it can, even when the person, maybe they come to you and they're like, look, I have a better opportunity. I'm putting in my 2 weeks. I'll do everything I can.
Yeah.
There's still this sense of it's almost like a breakup, or you
Such
tend
a
to,
good
it's a
description.
relationship.
Yeah.
And it's sad. And but I also think on the flip side of that, if you are a business leader and owner, and that does make you get in your feels,
Yeah.
you're probably doing something right, because if it,
Yes, I've heard
like,
that too, and it's so hard because yes, like I love our team, like they're definitely I feel like this sense of trust with them that's probably more intense than some of our family members because
sure,
I am essentially giving you my baby on a daily basis and letting you be responsible for it. So there
yeah.
there is a lot of that sense of camaraderie and trust there and I want everybody of course to feel taken care of. So it's hard. I guess like do you have that's one of the reasons why having someone like you is such a great tool and resource because and the wonderful thing about you is that, you're sort of this fractional HR officer, meaning that, small business owners don't have to hire you full time, but they get the benefit of your expertise and having that HR executive on their team without that full-time salary. And having that resource creates some of that balance. Like there's just things related to the people that I understand. Like I can't see the forest through the trees here because I am in my feelings. And the best thing for me to do to make a sound decision as the business owner is to get help from somebody who can really look at it for what it is. And most of the time, that's not going to be the owner.
And that's really where I found this niche, and that I professionally enjoy being, because I do have that opportunity where a lot of
Hmm.
times, if you are in larger teams, it's really hard to have those conversations. A huge majority of what I do with business leaders and my clients is I have conversations just like that. They
Yeah.
call, and we get it to a point where through coaching, the idea is that we use those services proactively. But I have conversations with business owners all the time of, hey, Michelle, I have these employees, they're having issues with each other. I really don't know what to do. And we were like, okay, what is the goal at the end of the day, right? Like,
Yeah.
what is our staffing plan? And we have those conversations because the thing about the people space is, okay, can you outsource your finances pretty easily? Well, hopefully, right?
Yeah. Sure.
Can you, and it's kind of that like very, it's tactical. It's okay, check the box.
Yes.
The people function is not.
It's not.
And it's not that it's better or more important, but I think a lot of times when you're talking about HR, all the things that people traditionally think fall under that umbrella, you're not thinking that that is like an immediate need in a small business.
Yeah.
It it sounds to a lot of people, I think, oh, that's another expense I can't afford. Like I'm a startup, I
Yes.
have no deep pockets, I have no investors, I have none of this. And then what happens down the line, unfortunately, is things do come up, right? You've got your first couple hires, you haven't classified people correctly, people don't know what they're doing. All of the issues that we see um, comes from not even realizing that there are resources like me out there that can provide that, specifically to those small teams that inevitably are going to have questions. And I wouldn't recommend that Google or, your AI assistant give you
Sure.
personnel advice.
Yeah, so that's such a great point. It's great for a lot of things, but when it comes to things like professional advice, you got to be really careful.
I
So
would.
you kind of touched on this a little bit, and I'm going to marry it to another question. A lot of what we're talking about is reasons why you want to talk to someone proactively as opposed to reactively. And we experience this in our profession as well. We have a lot of clients that come to us reacting to something. Their
Sure.
cash flow isn't where it's supposed to be. They're late on filing their taxes. It's the end of the year and they realize they haven't done their books. And those are really challenging situations for me to show up as the best possible advisor because a lot of it is like, well, coulda, woulda, shoulda, but I didn't talk to you
Mhm.
6 months ago. So, what are maybe like one or two like really key scenarios that come up more often than not where if somebody comes to you proactively, you're able to be a lot more effective than reactively, which is probably more often the conversation that you're having.
It's a question I get a lot, and I've kind of gone down different paths of like what is the most important critical thing that I would advise. And although there's not a one, what I am always drawn to is the onboarding process
Mm,
every single time. And I can give you an example from our particular personal business, because although you're not always great at practicing what you preach in your own life,
yeah,
I guilty sometimes. We as a business, we have a service company, so we have contractors that work under us, and what I realized is hello, the more people you bring on and the more times you do this, you need a repetitive process. You need something that you can keep consistency. But as you grow, as you scale your business, that's fine if you're, grasping at straws and getting all your stuff together to send out, here's instructions on where you're supposed to be the first day to that first employee or two.
sure.
But when you're doing this over and over, for different employees, contractors, vendors, you have to have a process, like
Yep,
hands down. And I think when people hear onboarding, they also hear the word orientation. They're two very, very different things. Orientation, in my opinion, is yeah, that's the slide deck you get. That's the
sure.
who's who in the zoo. That's kind of the meat of what you need to know for your first couple of days. That's amazing to share. You absolutely should. But even prior to that, at least what I do is every single person that is coming on board with us, we get them all of their paperwork, right? So have some
Yep.
sort of system. Some sort of system. You can have a QuickBooks type of thing. There's free resources out there. You and I know there's all sorts of stuff that you can do.
Hmm.
But get their paperwork right. So are they going to be a full-time employee, part-time? Are they going to be a contractor? What do they need? After you get that minimal, like tax appropriate paperwork, you need to get some sort of information on them. Are you getting IDs? Are you getting, are you getting an
Yep.
application? Whatever it is. And then they need to know where to go, when they're supposed to be there, what
Yes.
they're supposed to do, who they're supposed to talk to. And that is literally it. If you have some sort of, systems, if it's a remote role, you need to make sure they have access to what they need electronically. People get really overwhelmed and think, oh, I have to have this like robust process or system in place. And really you don't. You don't at all. But saying all of that, the risk in not having any of that and just, flying by the seat of your pants, number one, it's about the employee experience. So
Yep.
put yourself in their shoes, right? If we don't have it together when this person is starting with us. Oh, hey, I forgot about this, or hey, can you get me that? Or even those little things that, yeah, a lot of people are like, yes, you're human, you make mistakes, you forget things. But it's just there's a level of professionalism, no matter what business you're running, that
Yeah.
you definitely want to adhere to. So there's that piece, but it also makes it so much easier on the business owner. We
Yes.
know, and I know we'll go into this, but like a lot of times it's party of one, right? It's
Yes.
you at your kitchen table or locked in a closet somewhere on a computer. It's you, or it's you and a partner or a spouse or two other people, but you need something that's repeatable and easy. So save an
Yes.
email template, like make your
Yes.
process, all of that kind of stuff. Because at the end of the day, that is something that you don't want to have to think about, but it makes such a huge difference in how that employee shows up on day two. Because,
Agreed.
right, like if their first day is just chaos,
They're already overwhelmed. And you lose that immediate buy-in too. Like somebody
you
that was
do.
excited to come to work, like you've already sort of fizzled the
Yes.
buy-in.
I had a great mentor that I worked with for years, and what he always preached was you want to keep that day one energy
Oh,
as
yes.
long and
As
I
long as
love
you
that.
can. I love that too.
Yes, because I mean, think about it. Like, think about when you're starting a new project, you're starting a new role, you're
Yes.
launching your company. Um, you want that, and it's not that everyone's going to be just as excited as you are because it's not their business. But at the
Right.
same time, if you look at it, we try to approach it very much like everyone that comes onto a team, you're in some way impacting their livelihood, whether
Hmm.
it's their paycheck. But at the end of the day, it's okay, well, do they have kids? Are you helping, maybe you're getting kids food on the table or clothes on their back or whatever the thing is. This person is making a living because they help their parents or whatever. If you look at it from a perspective like that, and it's not just another body for to do your work and to turn the
Yes.
rent, I think that business owners can approach their hiring and onboarding experience a lot differently.
Yeah, I think that's so true. In the back of my head while you were talking was thinking about one job that I started long time ago, but just into mass chaos. And thankfully, I think for me, I was far enough along in my career at that point that I was sort of like confident in my abilities enough to like muddle my way through that. But
Mhm.
I just try to imagine someone who didn't have like the level of established confidence in like, okay, I know what to do in these scenarios, and you're going to lose somebody so quickly, which is not the point. And then it's going to increase your turnover, which is also not the point. So I think that that's so true. And you said it really eloquently, like it doesn't need to be this huge thing. Like I think that we hear onboarding and we either think orientation or we just think this like big long process. I'm a
Mhm.
huge fan of automation. So you said it, create an email template,
Yeah.
create a checklist, just do it the same way every single time. And then for those of us who are business owners, when you get to the point where you have the system in place, you can pass it off to somebody else. That's the beautiful
Yes.
part of the system, is that I don't have to be the one that hits send anymore on the system starting because everybody knows what the pieces are. And that's one less thing that I have to be responsible for. I can just rest assured that the system's being followed and the things that are supposed to happen are happening.
And that's how you scale, right? Like
Yes,
you
yes,
quite literally just described scaling. I mean,
yes.
if you want to grow your business and your intent is to grow some sort of team,
Yes.
3 or 300,
You have to do these
that is
things.
exactly what you have to do, whether it's HR, accounting, operations,
All of
you
them.
know, yeah,
All
just
of
keep
them.
that process going for sure.
So you've mentioned this a couple times, and this is probably the most common like HR related question that we get. Is my person that I'm hiring an employee or a contractor? And how do I know the difference? And can I just, if they want a 1099, can I just give them a 1099? Like, tell us,
Oh, you get a 1099. You get a 1099.
everybody gets a 1099. Ah. I
Um,
mean, I understand the question, and I get there's different incentives from different people for
yeah.
both, but there definitely seems to be a lack of knowledge around how do you actually legally and compliantly make this decision.
And it's hard, right? It's hard because a lot of times it is a lot easier, and I think people find that out very quickly. It's a lot easier to have an employee that is classified as a contractor of some sort, right,
Yep.
under a 1099. Um, the and I'm not going to speak out of my realm, but the powers that be between the IRS and the Department of Labor, they do have a technical, like a guide that you can
Mm-hmm.
kind of flow chart it, does this person do this? Yes. Okay, we're going to go this way. And somehow it gets you down to, are they an employee or are they, considered a 1099 contractor? I try to tell people take a very simple approach. If you want to go play on the website and go down that rabbit hole, have at it. Um, and you have to be careful, but essentially what it means is if you have a full-time employee, you're clearly having them on a W-2,
Mm-hmm.
you're having to pay their taxes, and that's your space, not mine. But from a payroll perspective, the company is taking on that burden, right? As far as the taxes go, and as far as also there's this risk and liability that
Mm-hmm.
is there from a personnel and labor perspective. So as a 1099 employee or 1099 contractor, you'll also see those classified as vendors at times because we should treat them exactly the same way.
Yep.
If you're working, and I think that's how small business owners can sometimes
Get a little
understand
perspective. Yeah.
right? Because it's very much the same. You treat any sort of contractor as you would a vendor. So you would set them up the same way, meaning think about what a vendor packet looks like. Whether you're filling it out for somebody or they're filling it out for you, what are the things that are typically involved in there? Well, you need, your person's information, whether they're under some sort of entity or give their social security number, and their name, rank, serial number type of thing. And then the other piece is showing that they are insured. So
Yes.
that to me is kind of the bigger piece of it, is having those people are actually supposed to carry their own insurance. So
Yeah.
whether you have people that come on and work part-time for you, you have people that you subcontract regularly, that's okay as long as the relationship is established and like, hey, this person actually carries their own insurance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not an insurance expert. I do think that there are certain probably clauses and coverages that companies can get that maybe offset the individual having to carry their own insurance, but typically that's how it works. So thinking about a contractor as like a vendor, are
Yeah.
you going to use this person all the time? What kind of activities are they doing for you? Are they coming in and providing a service, or are they coming in and like working with your team? There's also things that we have to be careful of with treating someone like an employee.
Yeah.
That's where to me, and you probably have experience in this too, that's to me where it can get very gray. Um, Especially I've seen it more in like an office setting getting kind of strange and teetering that line versus if you're working in like field operation services. And I say that because think about it, and I've been in, corporate settings, office settings. I can think of a time when we were on a project, we hired some administrative help. We contracted them, right? You're on a contract. This is just temporary.
Yep.
They were 1099 employees. And what ended up happening was there was a lot going on where someone actually ended up suing the company later on after a termination. And what they had under the company was, hey, you were taking me to lunch with your team. You were asking me to go to off-sites meetings with the team. You were inviting me to the celebrations. You gave me gifts. You treating someone exactly how you would the rest of the team. And
Yep.
although a lot of times, I think from a human perspective, we know that that's just the nice
Yeah, we
thing.
just want to. We just want to
Yeah,
make
like,
you feel included
right, like
because you're working with us.
come to
Yeah.
Taco Tuesday, right?
Yep.
But thinking about it from that perspective, there is a risk there. So
Yeah.
my recommendation is typically if there's a question, you need to look into it or ask for expert advice. Is it something where it's going to be some huge penalty and really terrible if you did this wrong and then we file and figure out, oh crap, this is not right? No, usually not, because as long as you figure out how to correct it and
Yep.
make that case for yourself, I've seen it be totally fine. But yeah, there's an inherent risk involved in that how you classify employees versus contractors. But thinking about it from that perspective, I like to just tell people it's a good practice to think about a contractor the same way you would a vendor.
I love that because I've said that to people too when they ask me the
Okay.
question. I'll use myself as an example. Like we're a contractor to you because I'm providing you with a service, but I'm also providing a similar service to other people and I have my own
Yes.
insurance. So
Yes.
it's not black and white because I think I've often heard people use like the full-time part-time thing, which isn't a good indicator because you could have a contractor come in for a full-time project for 3 months and then maybe they don't work for you. It's not a good litmus test. But I do like that sort of like vendor designation. Even if a vendor is working for you full-time, say you hire someone to come in and build you a house and yours is the only house that they're working on for the next 8 weeks, like they're working for you
So,
full-time, they're not your employee.
yep.
Because in that situation, they probably have their own business, their own entity, their own insurance, their own subcontractors that they're working with. The insurance one, I think, is a big one. Again, not black and white because it is possible to have like your insurance cover your subcontractors, but and we'll have to have one of my insurance broker friends get on here and do a
Yeah.
small business owner insurance perspective. But I also sort of think as my contractors is like I'm hiring you as a contractor because I don't want to be liable for those things for you. Like I'm
Oh,
filling
yeah.
a specific need and I don't expect that I would have to be liable for your insurance to meet that need. Whereas when I hire an employee, I'm doing it with the understanding that like I am assuming a certain sense of liability, that workers' comp liability, which is one
Yep.
piece of it, but also the professional liability for your work. So thinking about those things, I think helps people to make a better designation. In either case, it's not because Sally came in and asked you to be a 1099
I
contractor.
wouldn't know. That's not exactly how it should work, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the things that are coming up on the horizon this year? I mean, we just had a humongous change in administrative swings. So like we know that there's going to be tax law changes, like human resources, like there's going to be a lot of things. What are some of the things that you're anticipating being different that might affect small business owners in this coming year?
I've yes, there's a lot. We'll start with that. And I would say that right now, especially, 28 days into the new year, a lot of what we're probably anticipating, the things that are coming haven't happened yet. We haven't
Yeah.
been informed of them. Everything from the IRS, and taxation, like how that's changing. I'm like, I don't even know where to begin.
We don't know
I
yet.
will say, from a labor perspective and a people perspective, there are some things that are coming up that I think we should be aware of. And for me, looking at it from a very high level, like global view, if you turn on the news or even catch any word of anything, what I'm hearing a lot is invest in America, bring
Mm,
your businesses here, open your business here, whether you're coming in from somewhere else or you're already, an American citizen. I'm hearing, let's start businesses. Let's get people working again.
yeah,
When I hear all of that, when I hear, we're going to set up, I don't know, thousands of acres of, AI infrastructure. I don't know anything about that. I'm not an engineer, but I know people and I
yeah.
know business as far as hiring and how you do that. So, how many people and jobs is that going to create? That's a big deal. And that's a big deal for businesses, not necessarily because they're in that space. That means there's going to be more competition for really good talent.
Mm,
Um,
that's such
so
a good
we're
point.
yeah, like we're already at this, cusp of we've got generational changes in the workforce happening that are very prominent.
Hmm.
A lot of people, with succession planning the way that it's looking, we're going to have a really large group of, people coming up on retirement age. And frankly, there's people that probably aren't even at the, traditional retirement age that are just like, I don't want to do this anymore.
I'm
So
good. I'm good.
done. So I think about things like that. I think about businesses that may already be struggling to find some really good talent because that's
Yeah.
to me probably the hardest thing you're going to have to do in business if you're going to work with someone.
I agree 100%. And I didn't even think about that like long-term planning until you said it. And because we're in an industry where the talent shortage is very, very strongly
Yes.
felt.
Yep.
And just another reason why you need to have all of those boxes checked of your people experience, the onboarding experience, the
Yes.
benefits packages. Like even if you're not there yet, if your goal is to grow, like you said earlier, if your goal is growth and scaling, you have to be thinking about these things way far in advance.
Yep.
Who are you, which seats are you going to need to fill? And how do you
Hmm.
prepare to be able to fill them? Because it's not as simple as like, oh, we're just going to pay you $20 an hour. Like, it's not that easy anymore. You've got to really think about like, how do I attract the right person to my business? And then how do I retain them in a really difficult hiring market?
100%. And that's a challenge. That's a huge challenge with any sort of hiring for any size business. If we're talking about growing, and I think a lot of what people are going to hear is, oh, we're creating jobs. I think we're
Yeah.
going to hear that. I'm not against it or for it one way or another, but I also like data and I like to understand what exactly that means. And from a people perspective, what that means to me is, yeah, we're going to create jobs, but there's only so many seats that are going to be available.
Yeah.
And so how does an accounting firm, how does a manufacturing facility, how do you make sure that you can hire that next amazing CPA to come and work on your team? Or how do you find that incredibly skilled, pipe welder that,
Yeah.
all of the things. And I love how you complimented saying, you're gonna have to get really creative because
Yeah.
it's not about the $20 an hour or the $40 an hour, or it's not always about the money.
Right.
And everyone has heard it for years. People don't leave because of pay, they leave because of leadership and management. And essentially what that means is they just leave because of culture. They
Yeah.
don't like the culture.
They don't
It's
like the
not
culture.
yeah, and that comes from the leadership piece. So yeah, I think that a lot of what we're going to see is we're going to see the job creation piece coming up that people need to be mindful of. And then I think we're just going to see a lot of things going on, frankly, with if we're losing some of the labor pool, if there have been people here that have been working, whether they've been, maybe I heard last week, believe it or not, that the question came up of what about people that maybe have been here working, things
Mm,
have expired, they hadn't
yeah,
really thought about it, and at the end of the day, like, yeah, we're talking about compliance, we're talking about legalities and what's legal and what's not.
right.
But I think for a lot of employers, there's going to be some gray areas. So going back to, keeping your T's crossed and your I's dotted. If you're running a business where, you have folks that are on temporary visas, that have been on working visas or any sort of like sponsorship, the whole HB1 deal is a huge deal that's being talked about again right now. I would say best advice right there, just be really, like, go through and internally audit your stuff. Just make
Yeah,
sure,
you're
you
highly
know,
compliant.
yeah, because I mean, I think at the end of the day, no business wants to have any sort of practices that may not be compliant, but sometimes you don't know. And
Yeah,
so I think anytime you're coming into a new administration, a new year, right? Because
yeah.
this is the time of year when when the government likes to just throw all the new rules out there.
Just
But I
see
think
what
that would be,
works.
yeah, I think that would be something to be mindful of as well,
That's really good
depending on the
advice.
workforce. Yeah.
That's really good advice. I hadn't thought about that either, how many businesses may be impacted by changes just from the
Yeah.
perspective of the workforce is changing.
Yeah.
That's great. So I want to ask just to kind of like wrap it up and bring it back to you specifically. What is an ideal time for a small business owner to reach out to you? And I know that's kind of a loaded question because it's not really one size fits all. But again, just bringing it back to our early conversation about being reactive versus proactive. We always want to sort of like shake people a little bit because it costs so much less in time, in money, and frustration and stress when you're able to really address something proactively. There's just more productivity and efficiency that has from that. But it's also hard because we, as small business owners, we don't know what we don't know, right? Like we're really great at whatever our craft is, and then everything else is like a brand new world to us. So
Uh-huh.
if you could kind of whittle it down a little bit, like what's an ideal time for a small business owner to reach out to someone like you?
I would say a prime time is when you're starting to think about growing a team and what
Okay.
that looks like. So ideally prior to first hire. But there's no real key time. But I would say as you're growing your team or when you're starting to think about it. And a lot of folks, myself included, I offer a half hour for no charge to do a discovery call to get to know folks, to learn about your business, and to make recommendations on, hey, here's what I would think you might be thinking about. Here's
Yeah.
how we could work together. And I do know a lot of great professionals kind of doing similar work, offer the same thing. And I think that that's really important because bringing in someone with a background in people is going to help you, to your point. People issues are the biggest thing that happen, and that can take time, energy, and resources away from a business that allows them not to focus on the business. And
Yes.
so trying to alleviate people issues from the get-go, and folks in an HR capacity, especially fractionally, I do everything from talk strategy, have coaching sessions, all the way to, I'm posting your jobs and I'm doing your recruitment and your hiring for you.
Nice.
So there's lots of different capacities that a company could look to engage, kind of that outsourced fractional people function, but as early as possible would be my recommendation. Um, Similar to the financial aspect,
Yeah.
as a business owner myself, I've learned the hard way that one of the things that you definitely also want to have on board very early is someone, from y'all's perspective, accounting, bookkeeping, someone that's really helping you manage and guide you through those things. So for me, I would say when you're thinking about hiring somebody to take care of your finances, think about someone at least to have that initial conversation at the very minimum. Maybe you
Yes.
never do anything with it, but at least then you'd have the opportunity to at least get kind of an overall perspective of, oh, okay, like here's where your business is at. Here's what I would recommend thinking about.
Yeah.
Um, you can't do it too early. I think I approach it the same way as the financial piece. There's really not too early.
There is such a thing as too late though. So
Always.
worst case scenario, and actually like I prefer this, sometimes people do come to us really early and I have that transparent conversation of listen, like here's same as you, 30-minute discovery call. Here's some immediate answers to your questions for you, but
Yes.
realistically, you're not at a place where hiring us for ongoing services is going to make sense yet.
Yes.
That being said, I'm able to exactly what you just said, sort of lay that groundwork of like these are some of the points that are going to potentially come up in the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months that might be little bells that need to go off for you to say, this might be the point that I need to give Michelle, I need to give Christine a call because
Mhm.
now there is that need. And for me to be able to at least sort of lay the groundwork of like what those little bells are is so much easier going forward versus having to go back. I
Go
mean,
back.
like you said earlier, if you make a mistake, you make a mistake. We're here to help you fix that too. It's just you and I both know because we've been doing this long enough that the mistakes that you make as a small business owner are more painful than
It
if you
hurt.
had just done it. I
They,
they do. They do, and
yeah.
we've all done it, which is why I sympathize with it so much. We've all done it. They're
Yes.
just different. They're just different. And so I that's one of the things I appreciate about you too, though, and the fact that you and your husband are small business owners is because you really come from that place of I really want to help prevent those pain points for other people, right? Like we
Oh, for
know
sure.
you're gonna make your own mistakes, but if I can help you avoid this one because I know what it felt like having to try to deal with it, then I really have a passion for doing that.
Absolutely. And I think that's the important part. And that's what you get, with our teams is you do get that little bit of perspective that maybe other, fractional service companies would not be able to offer. But it's so true because going back to how we started, we talked about just it's personal and
Yeah,
it gets you in your feelings because this is your baby, whether you started it and you own it or you're one of the first leaders in it, it's important to you. And
yes,
so when you make some sort of mistake, when you lose money, it's your money. It's not big giant companies' money.
right.
It's yours.
Yeah,
And so and the money piece comes from every aspect. You make a bad hire, you have bad personnel issues going on, it's money.
it's
At
all
the end of the
money.
day,
It is.
yeah. And so I can't stress enough because there are really great resources out there like us, but there are amazing other professionals too. And so my recommendation is always just if you can find the time to sit down and, just go over things in advance, you can
Yeah.
save yourself a lot of headache down the road.
Okay, so rapid fire questions to wrap up.
Right.
Do you or don't you need an employee handbook?
You do. It does not have to be robust. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Please, for all things, do not have AI or download something off someone's free whatever. You do because you need to have some established policies in place because people need to have parameters and expectations of what the company is all about. Again, it doesn't need to be 500 pages. It can be five.
Yeah.
But yes, you absolutely do in some sort of capacity.
Okay, rapid fire question. Do you or don't you need to offer benefits to your employees?
You don't. It really, most states don't require you to do it. But I always encourage if you can,
Mm-hmm.
try.
That goes
Um,
back to our workforce and our employee experience conversation.
all of it. And they look and feel different depending on what and we don't have to talk about a 401k. Maybe it's an extra day off a month.
Sure.
Maybe it all of those little things. But No, you don't have to, but it's always nice.
It is always nice. Let's see if I can come up with one more. Do you or don't you need to have time cards for hourly employees?
Time card, you need to have them tracking their time in some sort of sense. So if you don't have some sort of template, make sure that they are submitting their, documented hours. It really just depends on you as a leader, how you're submitting that information back, right? Like if you're rebilling your clients for services, or if it's a direct thing, it's really it goes back to setting expectations.
Mm.
What do you want to see from your employees, from your hourly? But there does need to be some tracking. Uh, Absolutely. Whether it looks like a time card or not, give me something that is in writing that is tracking what we're doing and how we're getting paid for it.
And this one I feel like is so relevant now. Do you or don't you need to have an in-person working environment?
Ah, this is one of my favorites. So rapid fire, I'll go really fast. No, well, number one, it depends on the industry, right? Like
Sure.
you're not going to have a plumber that's going to be able to work remotely very well. That being, construction, I don't know. We can build something in Minecraft, I guess.
Sure.
But other than that, no, you don't. You can have incredibly successful teams, productivity, all of the good stuff with people virtually,
Yep.
right? I have some amazing colleagues that I have never shook their hand. I've never
Yes.
talked to them face to face, but you can grow really meaningful relationships.
Yes.
With your team. You can nurture your team. There's so much tech and tools out there. Now, uh, I think remote is really great in a lot of capacities. In person, obviously, there are things that we need to be doing in person and services that can't be provided remotely. Hybrid work, you have to just be very careful about. And my biggest recommendation in that sense is establish what you want and expectations early.
Expectations. Yep.
You
So,
know,
so true.
and yeah, but I don't think that brick and mortar sitting in an office all day long is conducive to productivity. And
Mm.
so it really just matters like what is best for the business. And I think the big part in that is not only consulting with, a professional if you have questions, but also what is the business owner? What's the leadership? How are they working?
Yep.
And that trickles down for sure.
Yep. The tone from the top.
Tone from the top.
This has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Michelle. I can't wait to put this out and share with everyone, and we'll share your contact information when we put this up on YouTube. So if anybody has follow-up questions, they can reach out to you directly.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I look forward to hopefully hearing from some people on the feedback.
Awesome.